intellectuals up there in Washington. You know the point. He was a populist. He appealed to a populist kind of a racist thing. He called them, and I said in this routine, I said, talking about George Wallace, I said, you talk about pointy heads. Have you ever seen the sheets those people put over their head? So that was one joke. That was one joke in the monologue. Another joke in the monologue was about Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was the champ at that time. His name was still Cassius Clay. And he was the champion of the world. And they took away his championship because he wouldn't go to Vietnam. He refused to go. And he was, of course, right to do that, I think. Now, what I said about it was this. They told him, you know, no more, sorry, you can't, no more boxing, you know, because you won't go and do your thing in Vietnam. So I said it this way. I said, Muhammad Ali, his job was beating people up. That was his job, beating people up. They wanted him to go overseas and kill people. And he said, no, I don't want to kill people. I'd rather just beat them up. And they said, all right, well, if you won't go and kill people, we're not going to let you beat them up. And they told me between dress and hair, they told me, they said, you can have the oddest censorship I ever experienced. They said you can have one or two of one of those jokes or the other, but not both. It was volume rather than it was the strangest thing. So obviously I chose the Muhammad Ali joke, which is a far smarter joke, you know, than the pointy head. And so that was my memory of the last show I did. He went off the air. Actually, I did the second to last Ed Sullivan broadcast, although we didn't know it at the time. We found out later that he was canceled.
Now here we're into the 60s. I'm taking longer than I had planned because there's so many things. You're into the 60s. Mm-hmm. You've been getting high since you were, what, 14?
Yeah, 13.
And you were going through, sorry. Good day.
These things are important.
That year does make a big difference.
That's right.
But here you are, you're 30 years old. The Summer of Love is going on, 67, 66. Everyone who's involved with that is generally about 20 years old. And their parents are 40 years old.
In the nightclubs I was working.
And you're in the middle.
Yeah.
And you're playing to their parents, and you made a decision at that point that you were playing to the wrong audience.
Yeah. Just a small backstory to that. Remember the Danny Kaye dream as a child? I wanted to be like Danny Kaye. So that was what I was pursuing in show business, and that's where I had come to that point on the road to. I found out in the interim on the way that I wasn't such a great actor, and I wasn't going to be in the movies. But I found out I was a pretty good writer of comedy, and that I could probably do that and figure that out for the rest of my days, and let that be my thing with some movies thrown in, So I got to that period, and I had dropped some mescaline, some acid, as had a lot of my friends, and I hung around with mostly malcontents like myself. All my life I had been, I got kicked out of all those things because I defied authority all the time. I wasn't in step. I was constantly out of step with this society and the authorities in it. And that was my B life. My A life was I'm going to be like Danny Kaye, which if you think about it is a mainstream path. That's something that you do. That's a people pleaser thing. You have to learn to please people and go on and get bigger and bigger audiences and become a famous movie star, and that's how you do it. But I had a B life that I didn't know about, that I didn't realize that this was bifurcated. I had a B life, which was fuck all these people, Fuck all these people. I don't buy this shit. Now that person was being kind of like suppressed without my knowing it. I lived it out in my private life. I hung out with musicians, and their hair started to get long, and the music started to change in the 60s, and the music was protest, and I was hearing people who were using their artistic talent to further their ideas and their philosophies. Buffalo Springfield and the Beatles and Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and so forth. And I'm thinking, that's starting to dawn on me that I'm not using my ability to further these thoughts and ideas that I agree with. I have thoughts on that too, and I'm not doing that. I'm entertaining these businessmen and shit in these nightclubs doing people pleaser shit. So I something struck at that time, and it was probably the acid, And And I realized that I was in the middle, that these people were in their 40s, I was entertaining the kids in their 20s, well, kids, not the people in their 20s, were embracing the anti-authority that I had lived. So I said, well, this is where my audience should be. And I didn't redo, I wrote a new act. I put in a lot of my thoughts and feelings, and it became autobiographical. That was the first thing that a writer does usually, is to write about himself, even if it's thinly disguised. Mine was open. I talked about being a Catholic, being a school kid, being a New Yorker, and the things that had affected me and that I enjoyed about school and those experiences.
Yeah, but during this awakening,
Yeah.
you fell victim, like a lot of us did, to when you're doing drugs and whatnot, it's not always conducive to productivity. And
Well, once you get to something that you can't put down,
right?
You know, I could, the beer and the pot. My lifelong buzz was beer and pot. You can put that down. You can regulate that. You can say, okay, well, today I have to do this. Start off, just have about 2 beers in the morning, and smoke a half a joint, and then I'll do that, and then I'll get high. So that's. But when you get to things like cocaine or any of the other ones we all know, and you get to the addictive drugs, it's a different story. And that's what happened in the early '70s. Once I had started my record.
One of the fallout things that happened as a result was Carson. He sort of distanced himself from you when you were going through this change.
Well, when I went through these changes, my appearance, my hair got longer, my beard grew, and my clothing became closer to I guess you'd call it the hippie ideal, And now some people in show business, some old, the old-timer guys, not old-timers, but the old school people, they thought that I was making a very crass decision to, as I heard it from one guy, to cash in on the hippie thing. That was their way of looking at this from the outside. They weren't attuned to the kind of, pot is a value-changing drug. It's a hallucinogen. It's a mild hallucinogen like acid, and it's a value changer. And if you smoke from the time you're 13 to the time you're 30, you have formed certain attitudes, and it just reinforced my malcontent, my outsidership, the feeling of being outside and not belonging. So these people had never had that, so they couldn't see that there might be some integrity in what was happening to me, and they thought, well, he's just trying to cash in. Don't worry about it. They'll see who's doing it.
You thought you were doing a Bobby Darin?
Yeah, right. Just going to the mountain and coming back, I am different. And it wasn't that. It took 2 years for this change to take place physically with the growth of the beard and the hair, and I did it on television. There were syndicated shows I was doing by that time. Virginia Graham had a 5-day-a-week show. Della Reese had a 5-day, and so did Steve Allen. And on these shows in this change period, I would explain what it was, that I don't belong in nightclubs. I belong on the colleges. I belong on the campuses. The beard would get longer, the hair would get longer, and by the time 2 years was up, I was there. But in the meantime, regular show business, which I cared very little about, but Johnny Carson was important. That was another platform that I wanted to show my kind of like new self, and they got afraid when they heard about it, because they thought, oh, he's on the acid, and they don't know what you're going to do. And I came in to see Johnny one time, and what happened was my wife had she had written a press kit that was very kind of telling about my new change, my new direction, what I wanted to do. And I was going to handle myself and just kind of be my own manager. And the press kit, I wrote a very funny thing about why I wanted to go to the colleges. I want to go to the colleges because you can steal lab equipment and stuff. And it was just a very bizarre letter. And I signed it with my left hand like a 2-year-old, And so they saw this at Carson, and they thought, this guy's fucking nuts, And they dropped me. I had already done probably 10 or 15 Johnny Carsons, maybe more than that. And they dropped me. And I was a year before they could see this other new self take hold, get some credibility by virtue of the fact that I was working in coffee houses and filling them. And then I did concerts and I filled them. And then they said, oh, okay. And they let me back on.
Yeah, but you made the mistake. Well, I shouldn't say it was a mistake. That's for you to decide. but you got all coked up and ran into Johnny's dressing room.
I asked to see Johnny in his office.
Oh.
I asked to come over because I wanted to present my case. But I was full of coke and I was real speedy, you know. I was gritting my teeth, and probably my legs were going like this, you know, and everything. I don't know. And I had a tie-dye shirt that was really garish and bizarre looking, you know. And that just confirmed what they thought. They thought, oh, fucking Christ, look at this, you know. So I had to fight my way out of that by being accepted in the place I said I would be, which was, you know, younger, I'll call it a more youth-oriented culture, you know.
Well, Johnny obviously knows talent because you ended up coming back and hosting. You filled in as guest host. How many times?
I don't know. It must have been 20 times I guest host. I've done 140 of those shows, counting Jay Leno, starting with Jack Parr.
Did you enjoy co-hosting? Was that too straight for you?
No, it was. I enjoyed the status that it gave me, and the exposure to talk about whatever other things I wanted to talk about. But it wasn't coming. And I was loaded on coke on a lot of those shows that I co-host. I did one show when I was loaded, and David Carradine was one of the guests. All right? I believe he was on acid that night. I only just say I believe that. I've never asked him. He came out in one of these, you know, he was in that kind of Far Eastern, that period.
Kung Fu thing.
Yeah, well, this was more like Far Eastern. It was kind of a diaphanous, sort of a flowing white garment, you know. And he came out, and he was sitting there on the couch with his legs in the crossed position up on the couch. And I could swear to this day that each time I asked him a question, that he was answering the next one. You know? Yeah. That's how fucked up I was. And you do have a list of the questions, so you kind of know what's next, because you do rehearse what you're going to ask. But I don't know how that would be possible, but it seemed like he was doing that. I must try it. I wonder if there's anyone out in eBay land who has an old copy of that for some odd reason. I have a lot of old stuff.
Can you imagine Mr. and Mrs. America laying in bed watching?
Yeah.
And you guys are on. By the way, speaking of being coked up, the very first Saturday Night Live, you were the host.
Coked all week.
And did they have to bang on your door and get you to come to rehearsal?
They say they did. It's been said to me. I believe it, because you do get, you know, you do lock all the good bolts and things and shit when you're getting real paranoid, you know. Yeah, I did. I had great coke too, and I did it all week, and I didn't like what I did on the show, and I was afraid to do sketches. I didn't want it. I told Lauren the first day, I said, "Don't put me in sketches. I'm not good at that." I really didn't feel very confident about acting ability, and I didn't know sketch acting is different from acting, so I didn't make that accommodation in my mind. So I just said, leave me out of everything, you know. Just let me do little spots. Let me do little monologues, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes here, and all through the show. And that's what they did for me. They left me out of the sketches, but I can see myself grinding my teeth on that first broadcast. If you ever see the DVD, watch for the guy grinding his teeth and catching his breath, you know, kind of like, you know, like, you know.
I believe you told me you had a collection of a videotape collection of you over the years, showing your hair, different lengths and whatnot.
I did. I must have lied. I think what I might have been referring to the fact that you can do that if a person wanted to, they could do that. The Great Recession.
Well, during this time in the 70s, when all this, you were finding yourself and going through these changes, you did a couple of movies. You did Car Wash with Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And you and Richard had worked together, though, before.
Well, the way Jack Burns and I broke up 2 years after we formed the act, because he wanted to go to Second City, and I wanted to be a single. I had gotten married in the meantime, and I wanted to be a single and for Brendan and I to have a baby. And I had to get out on my own, and we were in Chicago at the time, and that was the birthplace of Second City, and he was very qualified for improvisational theater, very much more qualified for that. We split up. We worked that night. We worked 2 weeks at the living room with Vic Damone. We made $750 for the team a week, and that was a really good level for us. Great to be working with an act like Vic Damone. He was, if some of you may know or not know, a great singer who Frank Sinatra said had the finest pipes of any male singer. And he had a string of hit records and a lot of things that were really fine work. And Vic, Jack and I broke up the night we closed at the living room. We broke up peacefully. And the next night I opened down the street from the living room in the nightclub district at a coffee house called the Gate of Horn. I opened up with Miriam Makeba and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I was the third act. I was the opening act. And from there, I went on. Jack went on Second City, met Avery there, and that became a story. What was it?
Richard Pryor.
Oh, Richard Pryor. Well, that was a period that began then of 2 years of drift. I did not have a partner. I worked out some of the contracts that Burns and I still had pending, places like the Playboy clubs. I worked them alone, but then I never got renewed, and I didn't have much work. And so I decided in New York after I was married. My wife is from Dayton. We would stay in Dayton when there was no work in the Midwest, and we'd stay in New York at my mother's house when there was no work in the East. And I decided that the only way to do this right was to take a stand. And now don't forget, I'm still in my clean suit and tie, short hair period. And I decided if I could get a little place in New York, in the Greenwich Village, where I could work out all the time like a coffee house, and I could develop myself there and get people to come in, get Merv Griffin to come in and see me, get Carson Show to come in and see me. That's what I need. So I did that. I took a stand. I found a place called the Cafe Au Go-Go. I spent 2 years there on and off. I could work and go away from there for 2 months. I could come back for a week. I could go away for 2 weeks, come back for 3 days. I could work anything I wanted they were sometimes $5 a night, sometimes just a hamburger, sometimes on a weekend $65 if you were working with Bill Evans or someone like that. So I did that for 2 years, and I got Merv Griffin in, and that's what gave me my start. At the place I'm talking about, the Cafe Au Go-Go, Richard Pryor was in the same state I was. Richard Pryor was still an unknown comedian who hadn't done any television. And he was in his inoffensive era, his inoffensive period. He was in his doing Rumpelstiltskin. He did a little, there was a famous Richard Pryor early piece called Rumpelstiltskin. That's what got him on the Merv Griffin Show. He was down there working out. We would smoke some joints up there in the high staircase in the basement of this place, and we would do our bits. Occasionally we'd be on stage together. I don't remember much about that, but the people came in to see Richard Pryor one night from Merv Griffin, and they gave him an interview the next week. So he got his interview. And then I'm still laboring there, and he gets a show from them, and he goes and does the show. Well, by the time he got the show, in between his interview and the show, I had gotten my interview, but then he had his show. So I was one step behind him. So then he got his second show, then I passed my interview, and I got my first show. So the two of us grew out of that room into this syndicated television exposure, which was nationwide, and was always watched by the networks. And that was how the two of us sprung to life.
Well, one of the good things about the 70s, you released those albums that most people hear on XM Comedy all the time. FM and AM, Class Clown, Occupation Fool, Toledo Window Box. In fact, I believe it was, I don't know if you know, but it was yesterday or this week, is the 25th anniversary of
you told
Class
me
Clown.
Yeah, that's nice to know. Those were 4 gold albums. I had 4 gold albums in a row, 72, 3, 4, and 5. And then I had a couple after that weren't gold. Those were what I call the Little David years, the Little David Records, owned by Flip Wilson and his manager, who then became my manager, and I was signed to the label. And that was the thing. You see, you need a way, if you're going to do quote unquote material that should be uncensored, I hate this designation, adult, or X-rated or something, but if you're going to do realistic spoken word art, you need, if you're going to get a mass audience, you need a medium. And the medium at that time was records.
Right.
You certainly couldn't do it on television. That was commercial, and they didn't allow that kind of language or those ideas if it was just the ideas that were dangerous to them. So I got my mass audience through the records. The records fed the box office at the college concerts. The college concerts fed the record sales, and it went around. Plus, you do some television and talk about both. I'll be in Buffalo, I'll be in Toronto, and I'll be in Niagara Falls. And by the way, FM and AM, but you did it a little more gracefully than that. So the whole thing worked. Then I ran out of record career. You know, you can't be the hot new guy in town forever. You can't be the fastest gun, because a faster gun is coming to town in a few years. So my record career began to kind of wane in the 70s, as did the counterculture. The disco came into play, and the people who are the true hippies and the true radicals, they kind of retreated to the hills, and the other ones went and got MBAs and stuff like that. And there I was, sort of not knowing who I was and who I should become, you know, to be true to myself. So I drifted a while, and that's when cable started. That's when HBO started in 75 or 76, and I got on there in 77. And now I've done 13 of them. That's my way of reaching the mass audience.
Right. It was the first one was George Carlin, 77. George Carlin again, 78. Carlin at Carnegie Hall, 82. Carlin on Campus, 84.
Yep.
Playing with Your Head, 86. What Am I Doing in New Jersey? 1988. Doing It Again, 1990. Jamming in New York, 92. We did that 40 Years of Comedy special. In 96, Back in Town. You Are All Diseased in 99. Complaints. That got a lot of complaints and grievances in 2001, and Life is Worth Losing in 2005.
Right.
I've been told that the Jammin' in New York was a special one for you.
Well, it was, you know, one of the big turning points. You know, I'm an entertainer because I work in an entertainment circuit, but there's an artist at work too. Not all entertainers are artists. Some are just entertainers, and they kind of experience their creative lives in a static way. They get to a certain place and they kind of stay there. Other people who have an artistic element or component grow, because artists always grow and go somewhere. Artists are on a journey. They don't know where it is going. They don't know. They don't want to know. They just know there's something else. There's something more. There's more in me. There's more to talk about. There's more to look at. A painter, a composer, they grow, they live, they grow. It's an ongoing thing. So that is true for me as a writer. That's the artistic part of me, is the writer. Well, what am I answering again? I'll get to it. Just help me out.
You were talking about the HBO special.
Yeah, and
Jammin'
it
in New
changes,
York.
right. So the artist goes through phases and changes. And I found my comic voice as a younger person in the coffee houses. I found my comic voice. And then that comic voice lasted until the late 60s, early 70s, when I made that change to the countercultural type material. That was a shift. That was a paradigm shift. And that was a change in voice, the comic voice, and the writer voice. And then and then through the 70s, I developed that, and then I kind of lost track of what would be next. And I didn't know. I kind of drifted, and I was grasping. Then in 92, even though I did these HBO shows, and they were plenty good, I like them. I still would stand behind every word of them. But there wasn't a new voice yet. There was just like an improved voice that was ongoing. In 1992, I discovered silence on the stage. I discovered that you could have long periods of silence. The show I did, Jammin' in New York, had a long, more or less serious piece called "The Planet is Fine, the People are Fucked." And it was about the fact that the planet will outlive us. Don't worry about the planet. People who tell you they're worried about the planet are not. They're worried about themselves and their habitat. They want a clean place to live. And that's fine, but don't be talking about how you're going to save the planet. You're not. The planet will outlive you, and it will heal itself. And that piece was very thoughtful and very interesting, and I loved it, but I had to learn that there were times in the show when it was okay not to get laughs. Because one of the jobs I have, besides getting laughs, is to engage the imagination. Just in general, to engage the person's imagination. If I make them laugh along the way, that's part of the deal for me. But I learned then that I had a kind of a more serious writer voice in me. And that's when another shift took place. place. And the shows that follow, that came in the 90s, are representative of that. There's more of a social commentator in them. There's more of a, if you will, a quote-unquote philosophy beginning to emerge. And that was another important shift for me that is still playing out.
Plus, it was the first live one.
It was the first live one. It was New York City. It was the first one done in New York City for me. I did it at Madison Square Garden, not in the big arena, but in the theater there that holds about 6,500. So it was a big audience. It was live, and it was my hometown, and I was king of that town for a night. You know, it really felt good. I looked out my hotel window that night, and I thought, yeah, you know, this is my town. One of those kind of scenes you'd see in a movie, kind of a cheesy scene. You know?
It was sort of an adult version of when your mother's friends used to pat you on the head and go.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was just a graduated version.
I still haven't covered books or movies, but I promised to let people ask questions
Good,
without going on and on.
questions.
Are there anyone here that wants to step up and have a question? Anybody?
See, it's probably
They're in awe of you. Okay, great. Just state your name, please. And
Hi, my name is Alan.
Hi, Alan.
First of all, it's very rare that you get to meet somebody that is an idol of, you know, and
thank you.
30 years ago, I was introduced to on that first HBO special that you talked about, and I just thank you for 30 years of
Thank you.
making me laugh.
That's very nice.
I'm curious about some of the comics that you've worked with. Who's the funniest that you look back at and you think, man, that guy is, you knew when you saw him that he was going to be as good as, you know, you've
Yeah.
ever seen?
Well, the only one that comes to mind, I'm sure if I searched my memory or if I had a better memory, I'd have other examples. But Lewis Black was someone I saw early in his exposure, and I knew this was a unique and strong voice, to say the least. So Lewis Black, I love him. I love it that sort of theatricalized anger and the things he talks about. He's got a good mind. I like good minds. He's one that I think of. I never hung out with comics. I still don't. I'm a loner. I'm a real kind of loner and an outsider. I never hung out in comedy clubs, and of course I never worked in them, so I didn't need to hang out in them. But I was just never attracted to the comic culture. Comedians who like to hang out together. So I don't have a lot of knowledge. I didn't have a lot of occurrences of being able to see someone early, I'd say that. But Lewis Black was one that definitely sprang to mind.
Lewis tells a great story how CBS wanted to do a series based on him, and he had to go and audition for the part of himself, and he didn't get it.
That's great.
He said, luckily it never made the air, so it didn't matter. Anyone else? Sure. Don't wait for it to be asked. Just walk up to the microphone.
Oh, wait.
My name's Chris.
Hi, Chris.
You've had the chance to see the entertainment industry evolve tremendously over your career. And one thing that's I've heard said, and whether it's true or not, is that if you saw a lot of people who are icons today, such as yourself, if you started today the way the system is set up, you might not get the opportunities. You maybe never would have had a chance to become who you are.
That's right.
Do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you think the entertainment industry in general has improved or just changed or gotten worse over your career?
Well, depending on the individual, that's both true and not true. I would say with user-generated content and the viral quality of the internet, that a person who is self-made, let's use that for shorthand, a person who wants to be self-made has some avenues that certainly I didn't. But on the other hand, life and the world and show business were simpler then, so it was easier to see where the path ought to be. I mean, there was only one way I was going to get started, and that was to get on a radio station, and in the midst of having that career going, to look around at places where I might have a chance to learn to be a stand-up. You know, there were some nightclubs and there were some coffee houses. So the world and the choices were limited, which was probably good for me. But I think if I had had the same tools genetically and had them reinforced as they were for me in this era, and I had these impulses to show myself off, I think I may have found a way, but God knows how different it may have been and how much longer it may have taken. It's a much more complicated place. I don't envy, I wouldn't want to come of age at this time, although I see a lot of advantages in it that we didn't have. I see that and I understand that. But I'm very happy that I came of age in the period I did, because it was you could grab it. You could kind of put your hands on all of it without much effort, And then now it's pretty elusive and pretty fragmented.
Now, you mentioned you sort of, I don't give up is the word, but you didn't take the movie idea of being a movie star quite as seriously.
I wasn't an actor.
And you've done movies here and there, and you've done voices in animated films. You were the Volkswagen bus.
In Cars.
Cars, right.
Fillmore. Yeah.
But recently you played Ben Affleck's dad in Jersey Girl.
Yeah,
that was
I
a
like
serious
that.
role.
Well, that was written for me, and I could show my sweet side, and a bit of irascibility, but there was a sweetness to the role. It was a grandfatherly role. It was written on a model of his father, and so it was kind of more suited for who I was at the time. The other thing I'm proud of having done, I did a Hallmark mini-series called Streets of Laredo, which was a continuation of Lonesome Dove. And it was the authentic continuation. There's an ersatz continuation that was kind of bogus, but this was the authentic one. And I did a part of an old scout, and I really felt good about that. And then Prince of Tides, I played the gay neighbor Eddie, and I was really happy with the way that came out. But I wasn't really born to be an actor. If I had trained all my life, it would have been a different story. If I'd have learned technique and training, yes, but I didn't have the tools. Hi, Mike.
Mr. Carlin, a lot of your comedy comes from things that really piss you off. What are some of the things that really piss you off that you haven't really talked about on stage lately?
Well, you catch me short because I don't have my computer at hand and I can't go look for a lot of stuff. I'm blessed with some pretty deep files. I don't suffer writer's block, believe me. This current show I'm doing, I went in there and I dug out the whole 75 minutes all at once, during a week's time, took it all out and began doing the way it was, those 75 minutes from scratch. So I'm very proud of that productivity record. But I think it's not so much what I'm angry about, because anger implies that you have a stake in the outcome, that you care. And I don't really care. I don't. I mean, it comes across as anger. Obviously, there's a heightened kind of intensified theatrical anger that you need to convey these thoughts. But I'm not personally an angry man. I'm not personally angry about these things. I think they're wonderful because I root against the species. I came to a realization, and this freed me as a writer. This was part of that transformation in the 90s. I realized I didn't really care about this outcome on this planet. I didn't care what happened to the species. I think this is a species that was given great gifts and had great potential and squandered them. I think this species squandered them. I think it chose poor ways of organizing itself, socially and politically. I think it made a wrong turn when it came to buying the okey-doke that the spiritual leaders gave, the high priests. We turned it over to the high priests and the traders. It's commerce and religion that have ruined and spoiled the potential of this species. And in this country, the same two things are true, but this country is writ large, and this country is the leader in the decay of the soul, if you will, just to use that metaphorically. It's just, and I just don't care what happens to this country. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. So, and you know what, the only anger there is, and I recognize in my voice there, you know what that is? It's really a reflection of disappointment and disillusionment and being let down by my species. We had such great possibilities, and they're not being realized. They talk about poets and philosophers, and aren't there? Yes, there are. How much influence do they have? None. There are more people writing poetry in America than there are reading it. Imagine that. Well, I guess that's true in a lot of fields, but It's just I think that's the anger. It's a frustration. It's a letdown. You know, it comes from, you know, how could you do that? That's why I usually always use the second person. You know, I talk about the audience and I say, how can you know what you did? You know, I don't say, you know what we did here in this country. I say, you know what you people did. I put it on them. It's not my problem. You know. So anyway, that's just a taste of what eats around the edges for me.
And if you don't know, if you want more of George's philosophy, the books, Brain Droppings, Napalm, Silly Putty, When Will Jesus Bring the Pork Chops?
Yeah.
And sometimes a little brain damage can help was actually originally a promotional item.
It was actually a magazine-size item to be sold at concerts, but I didn't. I wanted to put out some material in there. So I do pictures in too, because you have to have pictures in it. It's kind of a pseudo book, quasi book.
So if you want to know more of the philosophy, you just spew it.
Some of it is in there, yeah.
Yeah, right. Just read those books, because I always like to end on that note. But there's a couple of other questions. One of them that you don't like to be asked is, have you ever thought about when this is going to end? If you're going to retire?
Oh no, I don't mind being asked that. No, it's like I say, the artist is never satisfied. If you're going to be satisfied, you know, if something's wrong with you. If you pardon this highfalutin terminology, I'm talking about the artist part. You know, Pablo Casals, the great cellist, master of the cello of the last century, one of the outstanding musicians of the last century. He was in his 90s, and he was still doing a few recitals. And he would practice 3 hours a day. He practiced his cello 3 hours a day. And someone said to him at some point, they said, Master Casals, you know, you are a past master. You are the maestro. Why, at your age, do you bother practicing 3 hours a day? And he said, well, I'm beginning to notice some improvement. And that's the answer. I mean, why stop? You know, only if nature stops me, if I lose the ability to write or speak, some alteration in plans will be necessary. But I've already imagined, because they do have this for people who are totally paralyzed, that the movement of your eyes, you can look at a keyboard that's projected and you can type by moving your eyes to the letters. And they'll have that perfected by the time I'm paralyzed. I'm assuming that.
Well, to quote George Carlin, art doesn't have a finish line.
No, right. Yeah. It's just a race, but against yourself, with no reward except self. You know, the satisfaction of explaining yourself in some symbolic form or direct form. In my case, painting is more symbolic.
Would you leave us with what you would put on your gravestone? What's your epitaph?
He was here just a minute ago.
George Carlin.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. So, let me ask you something. Let me ask you, how's everybody doing tonight, huh? Good. Well, fuck you. Just trying to make you feel at home. Now listen, I've been out here all this time, and I haven't been complaining about anything yet, so I think it's time to go into the complaint department. This is just a series of things that are pissing me off, okay? A series of things that are pissing me off, because I don't have pet peeves. I have major psychotic fucking hatreds, okay? And it makes the world a lot easier to sort out. First thing on my list tonight, airport security. Tired of this shit. There's too much of it. There's too much security at the airport. I'm tired of some guy with a double-digit IQ and a triple-digit income rooting around inside of my bag for no reason and never finding anything. Haven't found anything yet. Haven't found one bomb in one bag. And don't tell me, well, the terrorists know their bags are going to be searched, so now they're leaving their bombs at home. There are no bombs. The whole thing is fucking pointless. And it's completely without logic. There's no logic at all. They'll take away a gun, but let you keep a knife. Well, what the fuck is that? In fact, there's a whole list of lethal objects they will allow you to take on board. Theoretically, you could take a knife, an ice pick, a hatchet, a straight razor, a pair of scissors, a chainsaw, 6 knitting needles, and a broken whiskey bottle, and the only thing they're going to say to you is that bag has to fit all the way under the seat in front of you. And if you didn't take a weapon on board, relax. After you've been flying for about an hour, they're going to bring you a knife and fork. They actually give you a fucking knife. It's only a table knife, but you could kill a pilot with a table knife. Might take you a couple of minutes, you know. Especially if he's hefty, huh? Yeah, but you could get the job done if you really wanted to kill the prick. Shit, there's a lot of things you could use to kill a guy with. You could probably beat a guy to death with the Sunday New York Times, couldn't you? Or suppose you just had really big hands. Couldn't you strangle a flight attendant? Shit, you could probably strangle 2 of them, 1 with each hand. You know, if you were lucky enough to catch him in that little kitchen area before they give out the fucking peanuts, you know? But you could get the job done if you really cared enough. So why is it they allow a man with big, powerful hands to get on board an airplane? I'll tell you why. They know he's not a security risk because he's already answered the 3 big questions. Question number 1, did you pack your bags yourself? No. Carrot Top packed my bags. He and Martha Stewart and Florence Henderson came over to the house last night, fixed me a lovely lobster Newburg, gave me a full body massage with sacred oils from India, performed a 4-way around the world, and then they packed my bags. Next question. Have your bags been in your possession the whole time? No. Usually the night before I travel, just as the moon is rising, I place my suitcases out on the street corner and leave them there unattended for several hours. Just for good luck. Next question. Has any unknown person asked you to take anything on board? Well, what exactly is an unknown person? Surely everyone is known to someone. In fact, just this morning, Kareem and Youssef Ali Ben-Gaba seemed to know each other quite well. They kept joking about which one of my suitcases was the heaviest. And that's another thing they don't like at the airport, jokes. You know? Yeah, you can't joke about a bomb. Well, why is it just jokes? What about a riddle? How about a limerick? How about a bomb anecdote? You know, no punchline, just a really cute story. Or suppose you intended the remark, not as a joke, but as an ironic musing. Are they prepared to make that distinction? Why, I think not. And besides, who's to say what's funny? Airport security is a stupid idea, it's a waste of money, and it's only there for one reason, to make white people feel safe. That's all. The illusion. The feeling and illusion of safety. Because the authorities know they can't make an airplane completely safe. Too many people have access. You'll notice the drug smugglers don't seem to have a lot of trouble getting their little packages on board, do they? No, and God bless them too. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, an airplane flight shouldn't be completely safe. You need a little danger in your life. Take a fucking chance once in a while, will you? What are you gonna do? Play with your behavior. I never get infections. I don't get them. I don't get colds. I don't get flu. I don't get headaches. I don't get upset stomachs. And you know why? Because I got a good, strong immune system, and it gets a lot of practice. My immune system is equipped with the biological equivalent of fully automatic military assault rifles with night vision and laser scopes. And we have recently acquired phosphorus grenades, cluster bombs, and anti-personnel fragmentation mines. So, when my white blood cells are on patrol, reconnoitering my bloodstream, seeking out strangers and other undesirables, if they see any suspicious-looking germs of any kind, they don't fuck around. They whip out the weapons, they wax the motherfucker, and deposit the unlucky fellow directly into my colon. Into my colon. There's no nonsense. There's no Miranda warning. There's none of that 3 strikes and you're out shit. First defense, bam, into the colon you go. And speaking of my colon, I want you to know I don't automatically wash my hands every time I go to the bathroom, okay? Can you deal with that? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. You know when I wash my hands? When I shit on them. That's the only time. And you know how often that happens? Tops, 2, 3 times a week. Tops. Maybe a little more frequently over the holidays, you know what I mean? And I'll tell you something else, my well-scrubbed friends. You don't always need a shower every day. Did you know that? It's overkill. Unless you work out or work outdoors or for some reason come in intimate contact with huge amounts of filth and garbage every day, you don't always need a shower. All you really need to do is to wash the 4 key areas. Armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. Got that? Armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. In fact, you can save yourself a whole lot of time if you simply use the same brush on all 4 areas. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Now listen, I got a few more items of things that are pissing me off. And this one comes in the form of a question. Haven't we had about enough of this cigar-smoking shit in this country? Huh? Hey, when is this going to end? When is this shit going to go away? When are these fat, arrogant, overpaid, overfed, overprivileged, overindulged, white-collar business criminal asshole cocksuckers going to put out their cigars and move along to their next abomination? White pussy businessmen sucking on a big brown dick. That's all it is. That's all it is. All it was. Yeah. A big brown dick. Sigmund Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Oh yeah? Well, sometimes it's a big brown dick. With a fat, arrogant, white-collar business criminal asshole sucking on the wet end of it. But hey, the news is not all bad for me. Not all bad. You want to know the good part? Cancer of the mouth. Good. Fuck them. Makes me happy. It's an attractive disease. Goes nice with a cell phone. So light up, suspender man, and suck that smoke deep down into your empty suit and blow it out your ass, you fucking cocksucker. Hey. Here's another question I've been pondering. What is all this shit about angels? Have you heard this? Yeah, 3 out of 4 people now believe in angels. What are you, fucking stupid? Has everybody lost their fucking minds in this country? Angel shit. You know what I think it is? I think it's a massive, collective, psychotic, chemical flashback of all the drugs, smoked, swallowed, snorted, shot, and absorbed rectally by all Americans from 1960 to 1990. 30 years of adulterated street drugs will get you some fucking angels, my friend. Angel shit. What about goblins, huh? Doesn't anybody believe in goblins? Never hear about them except on Halloween, and it's always negative shit, too, you know? And zombies. Where the fuck are all the zombies? That's the trouble with zombies. They're unreliable. I say if you're going to buy the angel shit, you might as well go for the zombie package as well. Here's another horrifying example or aspect of American culture, the pussification, the continued pussification of the American male in the form... Yeah, all right. In the form of Harley-Davidson theme restaurants. What the fuck is going on here? Harley-Davidson used to mean something. It stood for biker attitude. Grimy outlaws and their sweaty mamas, full of beer and crank, rolling around on Harleys, looking for a good time, destroying property, raping teenagers, and killing policemen. All very necessary activities, by the way. But now, theme restaurants, and this soft shit obviously didn't come from hardcore bikers. It came from these weekend motorcyclists, these fraudulent 2-day-a-week motherfuckers who have their bikes trucked into Sturgis, South Dakota for the big rally, and then ride around like they just come in off the road. Dentists and bureaucrats and pussy boy software designers getting up on a Harley because they think it makes them cool. Well, hey, Skeezix, you ain't cool, you're fucking chilly. And chilly ain't never been cool. And here, as long as we're talking about theme restaurants, I got a proposition for you. I think if white people are gonna burn down black churches, then black people ought to burn down the House of Blues. Huh? What a fucking disgrace that place is. The House of Blues. They ought to call it the House of Lame White Motherfuckers. Inauthentic, low-frequency, single-digit, lame white motherfuckers. Especially these male movie stars who think they're blues artists. You ever see these guys? Don't you just want to puke in your soup with one of these fat, balding, overweight, overaged, out-of-shape, middle-aged male movie stars with sunglasses jumps on stage and starts blowing into a harmonica? It's a fucking sacrilege. In the first place, white people got no business playing the blues ever, at all, under any circumstances. Ever. What the fuck do white people have to be blue about? Banana Republic ran out of khakis? Huh? The espresso machine is jammed? Hootie and the Blowfish are breaking up? Shit, white people ought to understand their job is to give people the blues, not to get them. And certainly not to sing or play them. Tell you a little secret about the blues. It's not enough to know which notes to play. You gotta know why they need to be played. And another thing, I don't think white people should be trying to dance like blacks. Stop that. Stick to your faggoty polkas and waltzes. And that repulsive country line dancing shit that you do. And be yourself, be proud, be white, be lame, and get the fuck off the dance floor. Now, I thank you. Now, listen. Long as we're discussing minorities, I'd like to mention something about language. There are a couple of terms being used a lot these days by guilty white liberals. First one is happens to be. He happens to be black. I have a friend who happens to be black. Like it's a fucking accident, you know? Happens to be black. Yes, he happens to be black. Ah, yeah. He had 2 black parents? Oh, yes, he did. Yes, that's right. And they fucked? Oh, indeed they did. So where does the surprise part come in? I should think it would be more unusual if he just happened to be Scandinavian. And the other term is openly gay. They'll say, he's openly gay. But that's the only minority they use that for. You know, you wouldn't say someone was openly black. Well, maybe James Brown. Or Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan is openly black. Colin Powell is not openly black. Colin Powell is openly white.
He just happens to be black. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And while we're at it, when did the word urban become synonymous with the word black? Did I fall asleep for 8 or 9 years? Urban styles, urban trends, urban music. I was not consulted on this at all. Didn't get an email, didn't get a fax, didn't get a fucking postcard. Fine. Let them go. And I don't think white women should be calling each other girlfriend, okay? Stop pretending to be black. And no matter what color you are, you go, girl, should probably go. Right along with you the man. Hey, you the man. Oh yeah? Well, you the fucking honky. Now, something a little more positive for you. Don't want you to think the whole show is just negativity. This is about a festival. This is my idea for one of those big outdoor summer festivals. This is called Slugfest. And this is for men only. Here's what you do. You get about 100,000 of these fucking men. You know the ones I mean, these macho motherfuckers. Yeah, these strutting, preening, posturing, hairy, sweaty, alpha male jack-offs. The muscle assholes. You take about 100,000 of these disgusting pricks, and you throw them in a big dirt arena, big 25-acre dirt arena, and you just let them beat the shit out of each other for 24 hours nonstop. No food, no water, just whiskey and PCP. By marketing and advertising, people. This next thing is about advertising. And by the way, if you should have any cognitive dissonance about the fact that I do commercials for 10, 10, 220 and still attack advertising up here, well, you're just going to have to figure that shit out on your own, okay? Now, this is called advertising lullaby. Keeping in mind, of course, that the whole purpose of advertising is to lull you to sleep. Quality, value, style, service, selection, convenience, economy, savings, performance, experience, hospitality, low rates, friendly service, name brands, easy terms, affordable prices, money-back guarantee, free installation. Free admission, free appraisal, free alterations, free delivery, free estimates, free home trial, and free parking. No cash, no problem, no kidding. No fuss, no muss, no risk, no obligation, no red tape, no down payment, no entry fee, no hidden charges, no purchase necessary, no one will call on you, no payments or interest till September. But limited time only, though, so act now, order today, send no money, offer good while supplies last, 2 to a customer, each item sold separately, batteries not included, mileage may vary, all sales are final, allow 6 weeks for delivery, some items not available, some assembly required, some restrictions may apply. So come on in. Come on in. Come on in for a free demonstration and a free consultation with our friendly professional staff. Our experienced and knowledgeable sales representatives will help you make a selection that's just right for you and just right for your budget. And say, don't forget to pick up your free gift, a classic, deluxe, custom, designer, luxury, prestige, high-quality, premium, select, gourmet pocket pencil sharpener. Yours for the asking, no purchase necessary. It's our way of saying thank you. And if you act now, we'll include an extra added free complimentary bonus gift, a classic, deluxe, custom, designer, luxury, prestige, high-quality, premium, select, gourmet, combination key ring, magnifying glass, and garden hose in a genuine imitation leather-style carrying case with authentic vinyl trim. Yours for the asking, no purchase necessary. It's our way of saying thank you. Actually, it's our way of saying bend over just a little bit farther so we can stick this big advertising dick up your ass a little bit deeper. A little bit deeper. A little bit deeper. You miserable, no good fucking consumer asshole. Because you do know, folks, living in this country, you're bound to know that every time you're exposed to advertising, you realize once again that America's leading industry, America's most profitable business is still the manufacture, packaging, distribution, and marketing of bullshit. High quality, grade A, prime cut, pure American bullshit. And the sad part is that most people seem to have been indoctrinated to believe that bullshit only comes from certain places, certain sources. Advertising, politics, salesmen, not true. Bullshit is everywhere. Bullshit is rampant. Parents are full of shit, teachers are full of shit, clergymen are full of shit, and law enforcement people are full of shit. This entire country is completely full of shit, and always has been. From the Declaration of Independence to the Constitution to the Star-Spangled Banner, it's still nothing more than one big steaming pile of red, white, and blue all-American bullshit. Because think of how we started. Think of that. This country was founded by a group of slave owners who told us all men are created equal. Oh yeah, all men, except for Indians and niggers and women, right? Always like to use that authentic American language. This was a small group of unelected white male land-holding slave owners who also suggested their class be the only one allowed to vote. Now that is what's known as being stunningly and embarrassingly full of shit. And I think Americans really show their ignorance when they say they want their politicians to be honest. What are these fucking cretins talking about? If honesty were suddenly introduced into American life, the whole system would collapse. No one would know what to do. Honesty would fuck this country up. And I think deep down Americans know that. That's why they elected and re-elected Bill Clinton. That's why. Because the American people like their bullshit right out front where they can get a good, strong whiff of it. Clinton might be full of shit, but at least he lets you know it. Dole tried to hide it, didn't he? Dole kept saying, I'm a plain and honest man. Bullshit. People don't believe that. What did Clinton say? He said, hi, folks, I'm completely full of shit, and how do you like that? And the people said, you know something? At least he's honest. At least he's honest about being completely full of shit. It's just like the business world, same as business. Everybody knows by now, all businessmen are completely full of shit. Just the worst kind of low-life criminal cocksuckers you could ever want to run into. A fucking piece of shit businessman. And the proof of it is they don't even trust each other. They don't trust one another. When a businessman sits down to negotiate a deal, the first thing he does is to automatically assume that the other guy is a complete lying prick who's trying to fuck him out of his money. So he's got to do everything he can to fuck the other guy a little bit faster and a little bit harder. And he's got to kind word treats me fine. So I worship the sun. But I don't pray to the sun. Know why? I wouldn't presume on our friendship. It's not polite. I've often thought people treat God rather rudely, don't you? Asking trillions and trillions of prayers every day, asking and pleading and begging for favors. Do this, give me that, I need a new car, I want a better job. And most of this praying takes place on Sunday, his day off. It's not nice, and it's no way to treat a friend. But people do pray, and they pray for a lot of different things. You know, your sister needs an operation on her crotch. Your brother was arrested for defecating in a mall. But most of all, you'd really like to fuck that hot little redhead down at the convenience store. You know, the one with the eye patch and the club foot, huh? Can you pray for that? I think you'd have to. And I say, fine, pray for anything you want. Pray for anything. But what about the divine plan? Remember that? The divine plan. Long time ago, God made a divine plan. Gave it a lot of thought, decided it was a good plan, put it into practice. And for billions and billions of years, the divine plan has been doing just fine. Now you come along and pray for something. Well, suppose the thing you want isn't in God's divine plan. What do you want him to do? Change his plan? Just for you? Doesn't it seem a little arrogant? It's a divine plan. What's the use of being God if every rundown schmuck with a $2 prayer book can come along and fuck up your plan? And here's something else, another problem you might have. Suppose your prayers aren't answered. What do you say? Well, it's God's will. Thy will be done. Fine, but if it's God's will and he's going to do what he wants to anyway, why the fuck bother praying in the first place? Seems like a big waste of time to me. Couldn't you just skip the praying part and go right to his will? It's all very confusing. So to get around a lot of this, I decided to worship the sun. But as I said, I don't pray to the sun. You know who I pray to? Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci. Two reasons. First of all, I think he's a good actor, okay? To me, that counts. Second, he looks like a guy who can get things done. Joe Pesci doesn't fuck around. Doesn't fuck around. In fact, Joe Pesci came through on a couple of things that God was having trouble with. For years, I asked God to do something about my noisy neighbor with the barking dog. Joe Pesci straightened that cocksucker out with one visit. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a simple baseball bat. So I've been praying to Joe for about a year now. And I noticed something. I noticed that all the prayers I used to offer to God and all the prayers I now offer to Joe Pesci are being answered at about the same 50% rate. Half the time I get what I want, half the time I don't. Same as God, 50-50. Same as the four-leaf clover and the horseshoe, the wishing well and the rabbit's foot. Same as the mojo man. Same as the voodoo lady who tells you your fortune by squeezing the goat's testicles. It's all the same, 50-50. So just pick your superstition, sit back, make a wish, and enjoy yourself. And for those of you who look to the Bible for moral lessons and literary qualities, I might suggest a couple of other stories for you. You might want to look at The Three Little Pigs. That's a good one. Has a nice, happy ending. I'm sure you'll like that. Then there's Little Red Riding Hood, although it does have that X-rated part where the big bad wolf actually eats the grandmother, which I didn't care for, by the way. And finally, I've often always drawn a great deal of moral comfort from Humpty Dumpty. The part I like the best, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's because there is no Humpty Dumpty and there is no God. None, not one, no God, never was. In fact, I'm gonna put it this way. If there is a God, may he strike this audience dead. See, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Everybody's okay. All right? Tell you what. I'll raise the stakes. I'll raise the stakes a little bit. If there is a God, may he strike me dead. See? Nothing happened. Oh, wait. Got a little cramp in my leg. And my balls hurt. Plus, I'm blind. Oh, now I'm okay again. Must have been Joe Pesci, huh? God bless Joe Pesci. Thank you all very much. Joe bless you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Have fun. Good. Thank you very much. Have a good time. Have a good time. Thank you.
This country was founded by slave owners who wanted to be free. So they killed a lot of white English people in order to continue owning their black African people so they could wipe out the rest of the red Indian people and move west and steal the rest of the land from the brown Mexican people.
George Washington, especially for his time and his task, was a great man. He was, in truth, the father of our country. And I'm sure he'd be very, very thrilled to know that we sacredly observe his birthday each year with a mattress sale.
We're Americans, we're simple people. But if you piss us off, we'll bomb your cities. Think about that.
You remember the American dream? You go to college, get yourself a job, buy yourself a house, get married, have a couple of kids, then you die. You go to college now, it don't mean a damn thing.
Isn't it interesting that the homeless now are starting to look more and more like us every second?
The 1950s was the most sexually frustrated decade ever. 10 years of foreplay.
Racism is a bitch. It's hard enough just to walk through life decent as a person. But hearing another element added to it when you're black, your mama's got that little edge on us, is enough to make you crazy.
Words that offend me. Governor Farvis, segregation offend me. Nighttime television offends me. We all are aware of what's going on in the country. To not be able to discuss it on the biggest and broadest media, television, I think is a disservice to the country.
If Joseph McCarthy was alive today, I swear he'd be a little squeamish about what's going on. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody's completely unbending on that opinion.
Because the truth keeps rearing its ugly head. It's going to keep doing that. So they might as well just deal with it and chill and just go ahead and be honest about it. Because it won't go away. It's not going to go away.
We stand today on the edge of a new frontier. The frontier of the 1960s. The frontier of unknown opportunities and perils. The frontier of unfilled hopes and unfilled threats.
What is the keynote of this administration? Is it conservative or is it radical? I haven't made any judgments yet. I'm very honest about it. I didn't know a thing about it. The senator came out from Massachusetts and was running for president. He came out to California, where I live, and first I thought he was kidding, you know. And he'd say, "I want to go to a new frontier," which was nebulous. And he'd say, "I want to get this country moving again." Yes, it's a very positive thought, but it's kind of spurious. Where do you know? And then he said, "I want to take you with me," which got to a lot of people. Amazingly enough, they say, "Well, I don't know where he's going, but he's going to take us with him." So he's elected, right? Belong. Okay, he's elected. Now he comes into the press conference, and I thought I detected a subtle change in his attitude, and he said, I seem to have inherited a mess. And because, you people are not willing to do what must be done. And, I felt like saying, well, you knew we were like that before when you... No, I didn't. I didn't know that none of you can read as fast as I can. Well, sure you did. I didn't know you were lazy. Well, you know what we were like when you were... No, I didn't. So... It's like right after the wedding,
President Kennedy has arrived from Paris for 2 days of talks with Russian Prime Minister Khrushchev.
We are very grateful to the city of Vienna and to the government of Austria for the hospitality which they have afforded us, for permitting us to meet on this most important occasion.
As you know, Mr. Khrushchev and I held a series of meetings last year. Those meetings were held in Vienna. That's in Austria. It's overseas. The meetings were held in a cordial atmosphere. However, neither side made a significant advance in a Cold War. No secret deals were made with Mr. Khrushchev. No basic policy changes are being considered as a result of the meetings. Frankly, the trip was a waste of time.
At the Pentagon today, they rolled in the teletype machines to be hooked onto our end of the Washington-Moscow hotline. The hotline will be in service 24 hours a day for urgent messages only.
Hello, Premier Khrushchev. President Kennedy here. What can I do for you? No, you don't understand. What can I do for you is just a figure of speech. It seems that one of your missiles has destroyed... Oh, I see. That's why you're calling, eh? Well, now, listen here. I can't hear... Caroline, sweetie, Daddy's using this phone. Honey, darling, hang up. It's a very important call. Yes, sweetheart. It's Santa Claus. You hold on just a second. Nikita, would you say ho, ho, ho? Fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city. We have a right to expect that the Negro community will be responsible, will uphold the law. But they have a right to expect that the law will be fair, that the Constitution will be colorblind, as Justice Harlan said at the turn of the century.
Show me that you want to assume the responsibilities of citizenship. Show me that you are as good as the white man and can live in his area. Then we'll be more likely to consider it.
Negroes have a right to move in under the Constitution. The only thing is, what kind of a Negro?
I had a wild neighborhood, I got to tell you, because my mother's Puerto Rican and my father's Negro, and we lived in a real big Jewish tenement building in an Italian neighborhood. Every time I go outside, the kids say, "Get him, he's all of them."
And when you look for a house in the suburbs, you must realize that there's a whole new phenomenon that we're all becoming more familiar with. It's called blockbusting. Now, blockbusting is when one of our colored brothers moves into an all-white neighborhood, and the property value is supposed to tumble, and the white people are supposed to panic, and they end up throwing bricks and bombs and burning crosses. And what the white people don't realize is that Negro that's living there, he's not afraid of bricks and bombs and burning crosses. He's afraid that another Negro will move in the neighborhood.
How is it every time the sun comes out, every white person lays on the floor like a dead horse, desperate to turn brown? Somehow born brown, not so hot, but turn brown. I was just in Miami Beach. They were admiring a guy with a tan there. What a tan! They couldn't get over it. Then they found out he's really colored. Get out!
Do you know, in my traveling, if I could believe everything people told me, we wouldn't have a racial problem in this country. Because everyone I meet would tell me the same thing. Greg, some of my best friends are colored. And you know, and I know, it's not that many of us to go around. Of course, I like them so well, I had them for parents. I'd like to say thank you very much, but never clap for me. Just take me to lunch when it's not Brotherhood Week.
Negro James Meredith attended classes at the University of Mississippi today, but the crisis brought on by his breaking of the state's color bar is far from resolved. Today there were riots on the streets of Oxford, where the university is located. The Mississippi National Guard, pressed into service, was compelled to fire over the heads of the rioters.
The only practical thing to do is to withdraw this applicant, his application, let him go on somewhere else to school. That's the only way.
Now that James Meredith is registered at the University of Mississippi, I want to say a word about that. And I know I have no right to, but I want to anyway. Now that the enrollment of the university is up 15,000, the ROTC is really strong. Meredith, they've let him in, but his tuition is $10,000 a day.
Well, I don't knock anybody who's not an out-and-out integration. It's just the way I look at it, very simply. It's just from a moral aspect. If you're not an out-and-out integrationist, not you're an atheist, because Christ and Moses were teachers. And if you keep anybody out of school for 5 minutes, you're against every Christ-like concept, so that you're an atheist.
This is no communist vision. This is the angry black man's vision. The 20 million black men of America get angry that America won't have to worry about communism. To worry about the rest of black people in America.
It's like hell to live up here. Well, the conditions, the housing conditions here is something terrible.
Spending my money, I didn't care. Taking all my friends out for a real good time. Buying champagne, whiskey, bootleg wine. But one day I began to sink so low. Didn't have a friend, no place to go. But if I ever get my hands on that dollar again, I'm gonna squeeze on through it till the eagle grins. Nobody wants you when you're down and out. Well, in your pockets if you don't have 1 penny. Well, your friends, you just don't have any. But just as soon as you get back up on your feet again, here they all come talking about, hey baby, I'm your long lost friend. Whoa, it's mighty strange, but without a doubt, nobody wants you. I said, nobody needs you.
The crowds here in Dallas seem to radiate a love for the presidency. The Dallas Police Department is working with a fully automated force to dispel any fear that the unfortunate incidents similar to those that accompanied UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson's visit do not occur on this trip.
In Time magazine, I saw some distortion. I saw some different captions in the pictures. It said there that she was helping the guy aboard, Secret Service man. I said, the guy wasn't lost. He didn't get a medal for being helped aboard the car. And I said, what she did, she hauled ass to save her ass. And the problem with saying that she was helping the guy aboard is that if my daughter ever sat with her husband and he got shot and she hauled ass, she'd always feel low and guilty.
She wasn't like the good woman who stayed. The people don't stay. No, and you can't make the false image and make my daughter pay the dues then for somebody who didn't stay. In fact, what did happen there, I'm sure, is that the chick was panicked and she heard, "We've been hit, let's get out of here." Well, she didn't know, let's get out of here, get out of the car. She went to split. Solid.
I, Lyndon Baines Johnson, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of the Presidency of the United States.
The office of the Presidency of the United States.
President Johnson, now this is a man with enormous political skill and a great deal, I think, leadership and courage. However, speaking is not one of his strong points. I mean, I get the impression when the president speaks that he's speaking under our heads. I think he either speaks under our heads or else we duck. I don't know. But he talks so. Well, his speeches are so ordinary, And I think the trouble is that his speechwriters used to work for a greeting card company. The president is here today to wish you luck in every way. He speaks so slowly, like everything is written on stone tablets,
We intend to convince the communists that we cannot be defeated by force of arms or by superior power. Once the communists know, as we know, that a violent solution is impossible, then a peaceful solution is inevitable.
Bob, what do you think of this protest demonstrations against the actions in Vietnam?
All they're doing is giving propaganda to the North Vietnamese, the Red Chinese, or the Communists. And I think they would sit down and intelligently go over what is being done in Washington. They might go along with President Johnson because he is trying to get out of there.
In these times, resisting this war and this draft is the patriotic thing demanded of me as an American. What do you think of the peace movement in this country?
I don't think that the people that are advocating it or standing behind it understand the overall situation. They don't understand the Asiatic mind, and they don't understand that we're endeavoring to stop communism on the line over there and not permit it to spread to free nations.
Take an issue like the Vietnamese conflict, and I'll show you how it works. Starting on the left here. The left-wing position is the Americans must get out. I don't care about any unilateral. They must get out. That's that position. That would be here. Middle-of-the-road communist position is they don't have to get out, but they should stop bombing the North. That's their position. The right-wing, left-wing position is they should stop bombing and they should start getting out, and we should open up the area to trade because their money's as good as anyone else's. This position is, I don't like them either, but I mean, my goodness, This position is, I don't know, we got so many men in Vietnam. What if the communists should strike somewhere else? I mean, I hope McNamara knows what he's doing, that's all. Now, the right-wing Social Democrats, which is where most everybody in America is, say, the war is a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. That's their Now, when you move into the right wing here, the left wing of the right wing says the war is a dirty job, and fortunately, we got to do it. It's a little different, a little jump here. Middle of the road here of the right wing says, why don't we escalate? Bombing the North, let's bomb Peking. And this group, of course, says, let's bomb them on Sunday.
For every man that we have killed or wounded, the enemy is losing approximately 10.
I don't believe everything they tell me. Every day they tell me that we knocked out 500 bridges in North Vietnam. Do you believe that? I studied North Vietnam carefully. I just came from there. I found out there's only 8 bridges in North Vietnam. How do we find 500 bridges a week to knock out? Anybody? I'll tell you how they do it. You're lucky I'm not busy. I'll explain it to you. Every day we send bombers over North Vietnam, and these bombers drop bridges. Then we knock out the bridges that we dropped. And we did this. You understand that?
This administration will never permit a lawless, violent group of terrorists to menace the lives of millions of people, destroy the purpose of this national convention, and take over the streets of Chicago.
Most delegates to this convention do not know that thousands of young people are being beaten in the streets of Chicago.
One of the conventions. Myself, I merely went to Chicago to entertain the troops. But I was impressed with Chicago and Major Daley. I even saw his famous stockyards. Major Daley, of course, had his headaches because of the telephone strike. It didn't look like the convention would be wired in time. But after the balloting, it was pretty apparent the whole thing was pretty well wired. There's another thing. All of the delegates at the convention have to be careful to hold on to their seats. At one time, over 1,000 delegates were in danger of losing their seats, which is a mild way of putting it.
Oh, God, we consecrate Richard Milhouse Nixon to the presidency of these United States with the assurance that from this hour on, as he and his family move into the White House, that they will have the presence and the power of thy Son who said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee.
Here at the Washington Monument, many thousands of people, mainly young, have come together for one of the key demonstrations of the day. It is being said that today represents the largest anti-war demonstration in American history. And that may be true.
Have the daisies been distributed? We want everyone to have a daisy and a button. Who wants an up against the wall motherfuckers button? Burn, baby, burn button. Have a nice day. Get your button, get your daisy, then split up. I want this group to start. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your fucking war. And you go, all we are saying is give peace a chance. All we are saying, bummer, bummer, here come the pigs, go limp.
After the peace march a couple of weeks ago, Attorney General Mitchell's wife was quoted as saying, I don't think the average American realized how desperate it is when a group of demonstrators, not peaceful demonstrators, but the very liberal communists, move into Washington. It was the phrase liberal communists that caught the attention of the nitpickers. But the Attorney General jumped right in and cleared everything up. He explained, quote, the dialogue got confused. It came out liberal communists instead of violence-prone radicals. Now, I certainly understand somebody make a slip like that. It's just very natural. As a matter of fact, this morning I went into a restaurant and I said, your money or your life. But what I meant to say was, 2 eggs, easy, hold the potatoes.
We're going to say, across this country, from Muhammad Ali to the little black boy in Cordoza High School, hell no, we won't go.
You know, I've been receiving a lot of mail from young men in the ghetto asking me how can they avoid the draft. Simple. Wait till you get your induction notice, then go down to the draft bureau. And they'll give an application to fill out. And when you get to the little section that says occupation, write murderer. You know, we have such dumb, stupid laws in this country. By law, we would never be permitted to draft a murderer into the army and send him out to kill. You have to be nonviolent, then we'll teach you how to kill.
You have an organized conspiracy going on in this country composed of the right-wing reactionary racist demagogues in conjunction with the police, the military-industrial complex.
You see, it's like a lady told me in Alabama. A lot of folks been praying for a long time for freedom. She said, now, prayers are good in prayer meetings, but they ain't worth a damn in bear meetings. You can't teach a snake not to crawl on its belly, nor can you teach a baboon not to sit on his haunches.
What we're trying to do is to establish within organizational force a repetitional group of individuals who will divide within themselves with a unanimous decision to overload the power structure, whereas we can devise our own destiny. You dig where I'm coming from? Now, the problem being that we are an internal group trying to work out of an internal bag, which we're trying to do very heavily. And with the support of the masses of people, we will be able to do this with a limited amount of time.
But I say violence is necessary. Violence is a part of America's culture. It is as American as cherry pie.
We have been subjected here for a long time to junkies, and it's nothing to see them actually selling the dope in the street. And the children have become accustomed to seeing junkies actually under the influence of drugs, which of course is not good.